You are likely tossing dimes and quarters straight into the trash every single time you cook dinner. Modern society has completely brainwashed us into believing that putting a hearty meal on the table requires expensive gadgets, specialty ingredients, and a massive grocery budget. But before the convenience food boom, mid-century American housewives knew exactly how to stretch a dollar and make the absolute most out of every single ingredient. They developed ingenious, frugal tricks that saved serious money, reduced household waste to zero, and created the most flavorful comfort food imaginable. Today, we are blowing the dust off 25 brilliant kitchen hacks from the 1950s that modern cooks have completely forgotten about. Let us start with the absolute magic of using bacon grease. Instead of pouring that liquid gold down the drain after frying up Sunday morning breakfast, traditional homemakers always kept a thick glass mason jar sitting right on the back of the stove. Collecting bacon drippings was not just about pinching pennies. That rendered fat adds a profound, smoky depth of flavor that no expensive store-bought cooking oil can ever match. Frying ordinary potatoes in bacon grease transforms them into an extraordinary side dish. A standard skillet of cornbread gets a magical boost when you grease the hot pan with bacon drippings, creating a crispy golden crust that is completely impossible to achieve any other way. Next is making your own homemade buttermilk. Country cooks relied heavily on it for fluffy southern biscuits and perfectly fried chicken, but they did not waste money buying it by the carton. Take 1 tablespoon of plain white vinegar or fresh lemon juice and add it to 1 cup of regular milk. Give it a quick stir and let it sit undisturbed for 10 minutes. The acid causes the milk to curdle slightly, mimicking the natural fermentation process of real buttermilk. At about 15 cents worth of basic ingredients compared to $4 at the store, this vintage hack saves money while delivering incredibly fluffy pancakes and tender baked goods. Freezing leftover biscuits is another lost art of the rural farmhouse. Smart homemakers learned early on that making a massive batch was strategic meal planning at its finest. The massive secret was letting the biscuits cool completely to room temperature before wrapping them individually in wax paper and stacking them in the freezer. Warm biscuits create trapped condensation that turns into damaging ice crystals, resulting in soggy bread. When a sudden craving hits, pop a properly frozen biscuit in the microwave or a warm oven. You instantly have homemade bread available anytime without spending an hour covered in flour. Using potato water to make rich pan gravy is a trick that deeply surprises modern cooks. That cloudy, starchy water left over from boiling dinner potatoes is pure liquid gold. Mid-century cooks discovered that potato water contains natural starches that help thicken gravy beautifully while adding a savory depth to the meal. Instead of using expensive boxed stock, start with your hot potato water. Add a simple flour slurry, season generously with salt and black pepper, and whisk constantly. The final result is a silky gravy that tastes much more like home than anything you could ever pour from a commercial packet. Before expensive specialty thickeners dominated recipes, cooks relied on one dirt-cheap ingredient sitting quietly in the pantry. Cornstarch can effortlessly transform thin liquids into glossy pie fillings and perfectly thickened soups. The trick is never adding it directly to a hot liquid, or you will end up with stubborn lumps. Always create a slurry by mixing the cornstarch with an equal amount of cold water until smooth, then slowly drizzle it into your boiling pot. It creates a beautifully clear, glossy finish, unlike regular flour, delivering high-end culinary results for just pennies a scoop. When the bread box was empty and the nearest grocery store was miles down a dirt road, families knew how to whip up a quick flatbread. Mix 2 cups of all-purpose flour with 3/4 of a cup of warm water, a little salt, and a spoonful of lard. Knead the dough until smooth, let it rest, then roll it into thin circles. Cook them in a screaming hot, dry cast iron skillet until brown spots appear. These simple homemade tortillas have fed generations through hard times, perfectly wrapping up leftover roasted meats or simply eaten warm with a thick smear of butter. In a frugal kitchen, a Sunday roasted chicken was never considered just one meal. After the family finished the meat, those leftover bones immediately became the foundation for homemade chicken stock. Toss every single bone in a large soup pot with chopped onions, celery, carrots, and cold tap water. Let it simmer patiently on the back burner for at least 4 hours. The slow heat extracts the healthy collagen directly from the bones, creating a rich golden liquid that turns perfectly gelatinous when chilled in the icebox. One single chicken easily yields an entire gallon of rich, practically free soup base. Forget buying plastic bottles of commercial salad dressing filled with strange chemical preservatives. The absolute best vinaigrette comes from a simple glass mason jar and 60 seconds of physical effort. Combine 3 parts of good oil to 1 part of vinegar in a pint-sized jar. Add a teaspoon of mustard to act as a powerful emulsifier, plus salt, pepper, and minced garlic. Screw the metal lid on tight and shake the jar vigorously. The tall, narrow shape naturally blends everything flawlessly. Keep it right in the refrigerator door and give it a quick shake right before pouring it over your fresh garden greens. Walk into any busy 1950s kitchen and you would see the homemaker cracking eggs into a mixing bowl using just one hand. This is pure efficiency developed over years of cooking massive meals. Hold the egg securely with your thumb on one side and your first 2 fingers on the other. Tap it firmly against the bowl edge, then use your thumb to push one half of the shell away while pulling the other half toward you. The freed hand can simultaneously hold a spatula or wipe up a spill on the counter. In busy kitchens, this physical skill was an absolute necessity. Mixing pancake batter from scratch every single week was a massive waste of time. Smart homemakers made incredibly large batches of dry pancake mix to store in the pantry. Simply combine 6 cups of flour, 3 tablespoons of baking powder, 2 tablespoons of sugar, and a little salt in an airtight glass jar. When Sunday morning rolls around, just scoop out 1 cup of your pre-made mix, add 1 fresh egg and some milk, and start cooking. This bulk approach saves a tremendous amount of money compared to boxed mixes and gets breakfast on the dining table in 5 minutes flat. Nothing beautifully illustrated resourcefulness quite like the magical transformation of stale bread into crispy golden croutons. Cut dry, day-old bread into uniform cubes and toss them generously with melted butter. Spread them evenly on a metal baking sheet, seasoning heavily with salt, garlic powder, and dried oregano. Bake in a hot oven until deeply golden and crunchy. These rustic homemade croutons possess a rich, buttery flavor that dense store-bought versions simply cannot match. They perfectly solve the annoying problem of wasted bread and elevate any simple winter soup or side salad. Sometimes the simplest hacks are the most brilliant ones. Vintage cooks discovered very quickly that in a pinch, a heavy metal pot lid could perfectly serve as a makeshift trivet for hot dishes. Those metal lids are specifically designed to withstand the exact same intense temperatures as the heavy pots they cover. When you desperately need to set down a scorching hot casserole pan and cannot find a cloth trivet, just grab a lid and flip it upside down on the table. The inverted lid creates a highly stable platform that completely protects your countertops from devastating heat marks. Before massive grocery stores sat on every corner, overripe, bruised fruit presented a wonderful opportunity. Wise cooks looked at soft fruit as the absolute perfect candidate for making homemade jam. The concentrated natural sugars in overripe fruit make it incredibly ideal because it breaks down far more easily when introduced to heat. Mash the soft fruit in a heavy pot, add an equal amount of white sugar, and bring it to a rolling boil. Pour the hot liquid directly into sterilized glass jars. 1 basket of bruised peaches that modern cooks might throw away quickly becomes dozens of jars of precious winter preserves. The cast iron skillet is the solitary piece of equipment that truly defined the traditional American kitchen. These incredibly heavy, indestructible black pans were very often passed down through multiple generations. The massive secret to cast iron is its unique ability to fiercely retain and distribute high heat evenly. This makes it absolutely perfect for achieving a coveted golden crust on cornbread or the crispiest fried chicken imaginable. The exact same heavy pan that cooked breakfast eggs on the stovetop could go directly into the hot oven to finish a meatloaf for dinner. Here is an unusual vintage hack. Instead of thoughtlessly pouring leftover cold morning coffee down the sink, Frugal cooks carefully froze it in their metal ice cube trays. When added to a glass of iced coffee on a hot summer afternoon, these dark cubes kept the drink ice cold without ever diluting it the way regular water ice does. Smart bakers also discovered that dropping melted coffee cubes into chocolate cake batter intensely magnified the deep chocolate flavor. This incredibly simple hack turned leftover coffee into a highly versatile kitchen ingredient. Long before aisles of toxic chemical cleaners existed, traditional kitchens relied heavily on plain white vinegar for tackling the absolute toughest cleaning jobs. To rescue a ruined, burnt-on pot, simply fill it with tap water, pour in a cup of vinegar, and bring it to a rolling boil. Let it simmer aggressively for 15 minutes, then turn off the heat. The highly acidic vinegar naturally loosens the rock-hard, carbonized food particles, making them incredibly easy to scrape away with a simple wooden spoon. This vintage cleaning method routinely saves expensive pots and costs just pennies. Leftover crumbly cornbread often found a glorious new life as Southern-style croutons. These beautiful golden cubes added an incredibly authentic country flavor to meals in a way that regular white bread never could. Cut day-old cornbread into bite-sized pieces, brush them with melted butter, and add a dash of cayenne pepper for a nice, unexpected heat. Bake them until they become perfectly crispy. The lovely natural sweetness of the baked cornbread creates a truly wonderful flavor contrast when scattered generously into a steaming bowl of spicy chili. Before fancy stainless steel kitchen strainers became common, clever cooks improvised beautifully. An empty tin coffee can with several holes roughly punched right through the bottom instantly became a perfectly serviceable, heavy-duty strainer for dealing with lumpy pan gravies. The vintage technique worked incredibly well because the punched holes caught all the unwanted flour lumps, while easily allowing the smooth, rich gravy to pass right through into the serving bowl below. This brilliant hack perfectly exemplified the mid-century philosophy of making do with exactly what you already have. While store-bought seasoning blends are convenient, making your own custom seasoned salt at home costs a tiny fraction of the retail price while tasting significantly bolder. Start with 1 full cup of regular salt, then combine it with garlic powder, onion powder, bright red paprika, and a little cayenne pepper. Store it in a glass jar with a tight-fitting lid. This incredibly versatile homemade seasoning instantly enhances absolutely everything from roasted root vegetables to a simple bowl of movie night popcorn, without the artificial additives found in modern, expensive store versions. Cooking cheap, tough cuts of meat was extremely common for budget-conscious families. Sprinkling a very small amount of baking soda directly on the raw meat before cooking actively helps break down the tough muscle proteins. You only need a 1/4 teaspoon of baking soda per pound of raw meat. Let it sit on the counter for 15 minutes. The absolute most crucial step is rinsing the meat incredibly thoroughly under cold running water afterward, or it will taste like soap. This fascinating alkaline science physically prevents the proteins from bonding too rigidly together, resulting in a noticeably tender pot roast. Frugal cooks successfully preserved their summer herb harvests, the reliable old-fashioned way by simply hanging them to dry on outdoor clotheslines, or a piece of string hung right across the warm kitchen. Gather your fresh herbs in small bunches, secure them tightly at the stems, and hang them completely upside down in a bone-dry, well-ventilated area. Within 2 short weeks, the herbs dry out completely, while beautifully retaining their fragrant essential oils. Homegrown herbs preserved this careful way possess significantly more bold flavor than faded store-bought jars that have been sitting on supermarket shelves for years. Decades before massive electric ice cream makers sat on every counter, families made frozen dairy treats with nothing more than 2 plastic bags. In a small sealable bag, combine heavy cream, sugar, and pure vanilla extract. Seal it tightly, removing all the air. Place that small bag directly inside a much larger bag, filled with crushed ice and coarse rock salt. Shake the entire thing vigorously for 10 solid minutes. The salt rapidly lowers the freezing point of the ice, creating a sub-zero environment that freezes the cream into perfectly smooth, delicious homemade ice cream. While modern professional chefs reach for expensive wire whisks, traditional cooks knew that a simple dinner fork very often works much better for mixing up morning pancake batter. The fork's spaced tines naturally create just enough gentle agitation to combine the wet and dry ingredients, while intentionally leaving behind some small lumps. Overmixing your batter with a heavy whisk rapidly develops the tough gluten in the flour, sadly resulting in very dense, chewy pancakes. The humble dinner fork consistently produces much better, higher-rising hotcakes with significantly fewer dirty dishes to wash afterward. Removing stubborn tomato skins used to be incredibly frustrating work until smart cooks discovered the brilliant blanching method. Score a very shallow X mark on the bottom of each fresh tomato using a paring knife. Carefully drop them directly into boiling hot water for just 30 seconds, watching closely until you see the red skin starting to pull back. Immediately transfer them straight into a freezing ice bath. Once cool, the tough skins will peel completely away with just gentle pressure from your fingers. This incredibly fast technique makes the daunting summer canning season far more manageable. Finally, saving your bacon grease deserves another highly specific mention for properly seasoning your heavy cast iron cookware. After gently cleaning your cast iron pan with coarse salt and a stiff brush, rub a very thin layer of the saved bacon fat over the entire metal surface while the pan is still warm. This melted fat safely builds up the protective non-stick seasoning layer and strongly protects the expensive metal against devastating rust. The savory bacon flavor slowly becomes a permanent part of the pan's character, keeping it performing beautifully for multiple generations. These forgotten 1950s secrets prove that true kitchen wisdom is rarely found in an expensive modern gadget or a highly processed box. By returning to the brilliant basics of the past, we can dramatically lower our grocery bills, eliminate household waste, and fill our homes with genuine, hearty flavor. If you loved traveling back in time to the vintage American kitchen with us today, make sure to hit that subscribe button and leave a like so we can keep bringing you more timeless wisdom. Which of these clever mid-century hacks are you going to try first? Let me know down in the comments below, and I will see you in the next video.